Hello again, this is Victor James, author of the Megacosm, and recently I've come to realize that I have a lot of guilty pleasure movies. So I found that Wikipedia of all places has the best definition of what I mean when I say guilty pleasure movie. And it says, a guilty pleasure is something, such as an activity or a piece of media, that one enjoys despite understanding that it's not generally held in high regard or seems unusual. And that's what I mean by guilty pleasure movies. And I came to my realization that I had a lot when I was scanning through Tubi looking for a movie to watch while I knew I was going to fall asleep. And I came across Hackers. And I actually got excited. I mean, I have Hackers on DVD, but I haven't watched it in a while, so of course I put it on. And while I was watching, that's when I realized that Hackers was a guilty pleasure because objectively it's kind of bad. So, a little quick history. Hackers came out in 1995 and was basically a cyberpunk movie, glamorized version of hacking society at the time. It follows a protagonist, Dade Murphy, who as a child took down thousands of computer systems and was banned from using computers until he turned 18. When he turns 18, his mother moves to the city and he meets a bunch of outsider teenage hackers. That includes a gorgeous Angelina Jolie at the time, who stumbles upon a plot by a corporate security engineer at Ellison Mineral to embezzle money and blame hackers for it. So I first watched Hackers back when I was a teen in the 90s, and I was at that age wondering what the heck I was going to do when I graduated high school. And there was something about this movie that just got me massively interested in tech. I saw them talking about things like dot matrix screens, RAM, PCI bus, IP addresses, and networks, and mainframes. And I was like, what is all this stuff? Yeah, sure, I had watched Star Trek, War Games, all these other movies, but where could I get my hands on this technology that was now at our fingertips? So I instantly went to the library after watching, and I went to the bookstores, and I bought a bunch of books on technology. And found them massively boring. I must have gotten like the part 3 of these lessons because I didn't understand a thing. Plus I rode my bike to a bunch of stores and realized laptops like they use in the movies were wildly expensive. We're talking like $4,000 or $5,000 at that time. That's $4,000 or $5,000 I did not have. But later I finally graduated high school and I joined the Air Force. Of course my experience with hackers still resonated, so I chose an AFSC that, would get my foot in the door in tech. Or so I thought. Don't get me started on what recruiters say you're actually going to do compared to what you actually do in the military. But that's a story for another time. Anyway, the more I learned about tech, the more I learned that hackers had lied. And this is what makes it a guilty pleasure because anyone who knows anything about tech can laugh at what that movie Hackers presented as actual hacking. For example, the elephant in the room. You don't see these 3D landscapes with virtual database skyscrapers that you get to pick and choose what data you get to steal. That just doesn't happen. But I get it. The director was trying to visualize what most people see in text during hacking, but it still presents a lie. Another stretch of the truth is the instant hack. In Hackers, you get a password or MAC ID of a device and instantly you're in, when in reality, I learned that it takes days and even weeks to properly hack a system. Now, I'm not saying I'm a hacker. I get, maybe script kiddie at best, until I pivoted, but I still studied hacking, and I know that even back in 1995, it really wasn't that easy. Then hackers kept highlighting things like phone phreaking. In various scenes, you saw some of the protagonists using dial switching and tone recordings to use, payphones for free and get into systems. And I learned early that those vulnerabilities were almost obsolete by 1995. But they made for interesting scenes and made the ragtag group of hackers seem kind of larger than life. And this is why I still enjoy Hackers to this day. Not just for the member berries, but because I can take it for what it was trying to be, which was this cyberpunk fantasy, cops versus robbers, where a bunch of teens were fighting the system. And this was back in the 90s, where everybody was fighting the machine even though most of us didn't know what the machine was. Gen X was popular for being counterculture with their music, clothes, and movies, so hackers kind of fell right into that subculture. Hack the planet was a slogan most Gen Xers could get behind because we were one of the first generations who questioned everything and wanted to know everything. So yes, I get that Hackers is very campy. The visuals are laughable and very inauthentic, especially near the end. For example, they show the code to make it look like this virus was an actual virus. I just think that was funny. And when they hacked the Gibson at the end, there's this guy, the villain, the Plague. He's fighting these viruses with some kind of computer interface with these giant buttons and a view screen. When I got to my first duty station in the Air Force, my first computer terminal looked more like this than that. But to be fair, there was a few things hackers actually got right. For example, when they were trying to figure out the Da Vinci virus, you saw them pouring through pages of logs and there's a blink and you miss it flash of actual packet analysis. In the books shown in the background and in the Rainbow series of books that they showed at the table, those were real computer guys at the time. In fact, I think I bought that Pink Shirt book during my book buying spree. and that kind of turned me off the computers altogether almost because it was so boring. And this is part of the reason why I continue to enjoy hackers as my guilty pleasure. The characters are still endearing, and I still love laughing at what they glamorize about hacking that was totally off base. But you tell me about your guilty pleasure movie in the comments below, because I know I can't be the only one who has them. So I want to remind you about my first novel, Fiasco Adventures, that's available on Amazon. It's actually available anywhere books are sold, but people like to buy from Amazon. I also have a Kindle version available we can get on Amazon for $9.99. And I want to remind you about my website, themegacosm.com, where I actually have my shop where you could buy it from me directly at a discount. And there's also a short story I wanted to remind you about that's available for 99 cents. It's actually selling very well these days. People are liking this story, so go ahead and pick it up. Also on my website, you can read short stories for free. So these short stories, Liquid Bank, Carry On the Cleaner, and the book, these are available for free. They're all complete. Just go ahead and read them for free. And if you're interested, you can read the first chapter of Fiasco Adventures for free, just to see if it's something that you actually want to purchase. And if my website's not your thing, go ahead and go to my Substack, where you can read pretty much the same stories on my Substack. But my website, I'm actually going to be releasing a book called The Narika Meme pretty soon, and all my available information is going to be on my website. So go ahead and sign up to my website. You can get that information before anyone else. But that's all I want to say about this. God bless you and keep you. That's it, I'm done.